How are you guys doing? Today is Wednesday, December 30th, 2020, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Simpson. For this episode of The Elite, I'm going to go through all the players in baseball going into 2021 that I would consider elite, that I plan on making an elite profile for throughout this season. And I think that these are the players that separate from they separate themselves from even the players that are really, really good from within the sport. Because don't get me wrong, thousands of baseball players around the world play this game, and of course the MLB is the top league for it. So every single player that I have on this list out of the elite baseball players are playing in the MLB. I only have one player out of all of the players on my list that isn't currently on an MLB roster, and I'm gonna get into him in a second while I start with the prospects, and then I ease through the American League because he's in the American League, and then I'm gonna ease right into the National League. So I feel like the only way I can label a player that's not officially in the MLB yet as elite is if they've been the number one prospect in the entire world. If you're the number one baseball prospect in the entire world as a teenager for back-to-back years, I think you're elite. Wander Franco is a 19-year-old shortstop prospect, and he's gonna move up for the Tampa Bay Rays within the next year or two. He's hit at least 300 in every single stage of Double-A. He's a switch hitter, and I think he may go down as one of the greatest hitters ever. And I think that for him being such an elite prospect, I think it's more than fair to include him among the list of the elite baseball players in baseball. And sticking with the Tampa Bay Rays, I think their outfielder Randy Arozarena, who came up as a rookie this year and then set the MLB record for hits in an entire playoff run and home runs in an entire playoff run, even though the Rays lost in the World Series. I think a playoff run like that gives you a separate distinction, and he should, going into 2021, I'm going to analyze Randy Arozarena as if he was an elite player, because if there was a certain amount of games to show that you were an elite player in baseball, it was the playoffs, and he's had a better playoff run hitting wise than any other player that's played the game. Staying out in the East, jumping to the Blue Jays, I think their starting pitcher Hyunjin Ryu is elite. I mean, considering he's been a Cy Young candidate in both the NL and the AL in back-to-back years, and he was still able to make one of the first. He made the second team of starting pitchers for all MLB. I think Hyunjin Ryu at 33 is definitely still in his elite prime, and I think going forward he's going to be a very valuable pitcher for years to come. And then I think their first baseman Vladimir Guerrero Jr., their 21-year-old first baseman Vladimir Guerrero Jr. should be regarded as elite. Before Wander Franco was the teenage phenom, it was Vladimir Guerrero Jr. As a teenager, he was the top prospect in all of baseball. Since he's been promoted to Toronto, his first full season was the quarantine season. But he didn't play especially well, but he's seeming to get his groove on everything. And people are forgetting that he is 21, playing in the MLB, where almost every other 21-year-old is playing in the minors, in Double-A, possibly most likely Single A. So Vladimir Guerrero Jr., for being one of the only 21-year-olds that's actually performing at this level on the MLB, is a very huge feat. I didn't include anyone from the Baltimore Orioles, so finishing off the AL East with the Boston Red Sox. I think that their starting pitcher, Chris Sale, definitely deserves to be recognized as one of the elite players in all of baseball. He hit 1,000 strikeouts, or he's had the most strikeouts in 1,000 innings or something. Well, Chris Sale he's a historically great strikeout pitcher, and considering his last full year was a little off, I don't think that Chris Sale I don't think he's strained far from his elite status, and I think going into this next season, Chris Sale is definitely going to be a pitcher to be feared, and let's not forget he already has a title under his belt for being the ace on the best team in the league for a season. And then at DH, I think JD Martinez is the real deal. I mean, he's a consistent 30 home run, 100 RBI guy. He's been so since he got to the team, and he was doing so before he got to Boston. The quarantine season wasn't the best for him, but I think going into 2021, if I was a Boston Red Sox fan, I'd be very happy and I'd be very content that JD Martinez was on my team. He wasn't showing it necessarily this year, but JD Martinez is still a very premier all-around baseball player. Finishing off the division with the Yankees, I think that Garrett Cole deserves to be recognized as elite, especially for getting his payday contract with the New York Yankees. You only have to be elite to get a contract such as that. And in his first year in New York, he was able to be a second-team all MLB pitcher with a sub-3 ERA, and he was able to get the win. He was able to win games for the Yankees that he really needed to. He was able to get the Yankees into the playoffs as well, and I think that out of that entire roster, he's the only pitcher on that roster that I would deem elite, because I think he is. Going through the Yankees hitters, their designated hitter Giancarlo Stanton, I believe, is still elite. Even considering his last All-Star game was in 2017. When Giancarlo Stanton plays baseball games, he's really good. His main problem is that he's been injury prone, but when he plays in full seasons, he gets a lot of home runs, and when he plays in very few games, he still manages to hit a lot of home runs. And surprisingly, he hit the first home run of 2020. So, I mean, Giancarlo Stanton is the real deal in the MLB. He's only 31 in a sport that sees players get a lot better with age, especially if they're elite hitters. And I think the Yankees are definitely going to enjoy being the team that's paying him his money this year, because when he plays, he's very, very good. At shortstop, I said that their 24-year-old Gleyber Torres should definitely be recognized as elite. He's been a two-time All-Star since he's been in the league. His third season, they of course, didn't have All-Star voting. He's the heir apparent to Derek Jeter. He plays incredible defense, and he's one of the best hitting shortstops in all of baseball. And at 24, he only seems to get better. So I think Gleyber Torres, is a no-brainer. And then their 28-year-old outfielder, Aaron Judge, I believe deserves to be recognized as an elite player. He had one of the most historic rookie seasons ever. And his last 3 seasons, he didn't play full seasons, but he was still another player that, like Giancarlo, when he plays, he gets a lot of production in the few minutes that he does play. Just know that if he were to play a full season for the Yankees, he were to make a good amount of contact. He's hitting a lot of home runs. He's hitting a lot of balls very deep. And I think even though he hasn't been an all-star in the past couple seasons, Aaron Judge still deserves to be recognized as one of the best baseball players in the world. That's the American League East. Jumping to the American League Central, starting with the Twins, I think their 40-year-old designated hitter, Nelson Cruz, deserves to be recognized as one of the best players in the league. He was the second-team All-MLB designated hitter. He was the best designated hitter in the American League, and for the very first time, the best designated hitter in the American League and the best designated hitter in the MLB are two completely different players. But alas, that's what happened. And then he was also given the Players' Choice. So he was given the Marvin Miller Man of the Year award for his work off the field. And for what he was doing with the Twins this year, he had an amazing year and just showing that he's one of the players that just gets better with age. He's going well into his 40s, and I think it's a no-brainer that he's still elite, which should say a lot for how good he is. Going to the south side of Chicago, starting with their starting pitchers, I think that Dallas Keuchel deserves to still be recognized as elite for putting together another amazing season. He was the ace for a team that made it right back to the playoffs, and he still pitched a ERA around 2, putting together one of his seasons that was reminiscent of his All-Star season. He's a multiple-time All-Star. When he gets everything together, he's a great pitcher, and I think that considering, I don't think it's enough considering he put an All-Star season together, I think it's still worth knowing that this dude did win the Cy Young a couple years ago when he played in Houston. Moving to first base, I still think Jose Abreu, especially after he won the American League MVP, should be considered as elite. He won the Rookie of the Year not that long ago, and he's showing that he's the best first baseman in the American League. He was second-team All-MLB after Freddie Freeman, but he put together a season for the ages, leading the American League in RBIs and coming close to the league in home runs. And then I think their shortstop, Tim Anderson, deserves to be recognized as well. In 2019, he finished with the American League batting title, and in the second year during quarantine, he was probably their most consistent hitter. That wasn't Jose Abreu. He plays incredible defense, and I think Tim Anderson at 27 is only going to get better, and I think he makes the Chicago White Sox a watchable team. And out of their great young core, I think Tim Anderson's one of the few players that I think has crossed that threshold and deserves to be recognized as an elite player for this White Sox team. So that's the White Sox. Jumping into the Kansas City Royals, I think that their shortstop, or I think that their catcher, Salvador Perez, who is 30 years old, deserves to be recognized for his elite play. He hasn't played a full season since 2018, but of course he's made the last five. He's made the last 5 All-Star games, and this season, considering he played only 37 games, he was the first team All MLB catcher, which should show you kind of what his reign on the position is. And let's not forget that he won a World Series and he has the World Series MVP. And even though the Royals aren't competing at that level, Salvador Perez has been competing at the same level since he's gotten in the league. And I think their second baseman, Whit Merrifield, deserves to be recognized as elite too. Considering he's had multiple seasons where he's set at the top of the American League in hits, it's pretty hard to get to average more than 1 hit in the MLB, and he kind of does so with ease. And I think that this year is the year that Whit Merrifield deserves to have I think this is the year that Whit Merrifield deserves to have an elite profile written about him for this season. So that's, of course, the Royals. And jumping to the Cleveland Indians, who are, of course, changing their name. Their replacement pitcher, Brad Hand, I think deserves to be recognized as one of the elite players in baseball. He was named to the second team and he was named to an All-MLB team for the second year in a row. He's one of the league's best replacement pitchers. I think he led the American League in saves last year, and he was a big part of the reason why the Indians were a playoff team. And he limits a very few amount of runs, and he's a very reliable pitcher down the stretch, which is why the Indians place so much trust in him. And then also taking the mound for the Indians, their 25-year-old starting pitcher, Shane Bieber, deserves to be recognized as elite, considering he won the American League Triple Crown, which is leading in wins, earned run average, and strikeouts. And he won the American Cy Young Award unanimously, which should show that he's the most dominant pitcher in the American League right now, or at least he had the most dominant season. And because of that, Shane Bieber definitely deserves to be recognized as an elite player. And let's not forget that he was an all-star before this season. Going out to the position players, their 28-year-old third baseman, Jose Ramirez, deserves to be recognized as elite. He almost finished with the American League MVP after an amazing end to the season, which saw him lead the team in home runs and RBIs. After he's been a MVP candidate for the 2 years prior to that. So I think it's fair that Jose Ramirez be recognized as one of the best players in baseball. And he finished the season this year as a second-team All-MLB third baseman. And then at shortstop, their 27-year-old Francisco Lindor deserves to be recognized as elite. He's an amazing two-way hitter who puts up amazing home run, RBI, and hit seasons consistently. And he's one of the few players in the league with more than one Silver Slugger award and more than one Gold Glove. So Francisco Lindor deserves all of that love for the Cleveland Indians thus far moving forward. And that's the Cleveland Indians. And because I don't have anyone listed from the Detroit Tigers, that's what the American Central is looking like. But then jumping out to the American League West, I don't think I had anyone. The only player I had listed from the Texas Rangers is their starting pitcher, Corey Kluber, who in his last few seasons as playing full seasons as the starting pitcher, he's proven that he's one of the best in the American League, putting himself into the Cy Young conversation. And I think he's won a couple of Cy Youngs when he was in Cleveland. He hasn't played a full season in Texas because I think he pulled something in his shoulder during his first pitch, but hopefully give this man a full season. Corey Kluber will show why Texas paid all that money for him. And I think he's still an amazing pitcher at 34 who hasn't shown a lot of – he's shown signs of slowing down, but that's because he got injured. But I'm not going to count Corey Kluber out considering the amazing years that he's put into the league this year. So that's the Rangers. And looking at to Houston, starting out with their starting pitcher, Justin Verlander, who won the most recent American League Cy Young at the age of 36, deserves to be recognized as one of the most elite players in baseball. It would be his forearm strain. That would be the reason why he didn't play for most of the season, and he missed out of the Astros playoff run. But don't be mistaken, Justin Verlander still won the MVP in 2011 for his elite pitching performance, and then he won his second Cy Young on the other side of the decade. So Justin Verlander deserves to be recognized as one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. Their second baseman, Jose Altuve, even though he's 2 years removed from his glory, he had 4 200-hit seasons, and I totally doubt that at 30 years old he has nothing left in the tank. Jose Altuve, out of all position players, even though the Astros got hit with the cheating scandal, Jose Altuve is definitely a player that needs to be watched in 2021 because he's a player that can take a lot of great pitchers and then hit their pitches like any way he really pleases. And then also along him, to round out the team of a team of champions, their 26-year-old third baseman Alex Bregman deserves to be recognized as elite as well. His last few seasons, he's put up incredible hitting numbers while not striking out a lot, which is an impressive feat. He's come into his own after that clutch hit against the Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series. But of course, the Astros are putting together a great season, beginning to end. But I still think that Alex Bregman at 26, he has his best years ahead of him, and he has a lot more to do. And with this Astros team, Alex Bregman might be their best player in the face of their position players moving forward, as it transitions from Jose Altuve. Jumping out into California, starting with the Athletics, their third baseman, Matt Chapman, I think, deserves to be recognized as one of the elite players in baseball. He's won the best defensive player in baseball for a couple of years, and he's known as the best defensive third baseman in the American League. And if Nolan Arenado wasn't an 8-time Gold Glover, they would say that Matt Chapman is the best defensive third baseman in all of baseball. And in addition to his defensive prowess, he still gets a lot of home runs and RBIs for the team, which is enough to say that he is an elite player in today's baseball, in today's MLB. And their replacement pitcher, Liam Hendriks, who was named to the first team All MLB, deserves to be recognized for his elite performance as well, as he finished at the top of the American League in saves, helping the Oakland Athletics push to the second best record in the American League. And then just going forward, Liam Hendriks is a very trusted replacement pitcher, and when he goes into the game, just know that a lot of hitters are not getting hits against Liam Hendriks, and I think it's really rare that I don't have that many replacement pitchers on here, but Liam Hendriks deserves to be recognized for how good and dominant he is with this team. Jumping out to the Angels, starting with their position players, their third baseman, Anthony Rendon, I think deserves to be recognized as an elite player. I think he was the best player from the Washington Nationals team in 2019 that won the World Series. He was the MVP candidate on that team, and even though Juan Soto put up great performances, the same with Howie Kendrick, let's not forget that Anthony Rendon was the player that got them there. And now that he's switched leagues to the American League, I think he's had his 60-game season of adjustment, but I think this season is going to be a very big one for Anthony Rendon at third base at hot corner. And then their 29-year-old third baseman, Mike Trout, of course, deserves to be recognized as a GOAT within the sport. He was the last American League MVP, and he won, and that was his third MVP. And most of the other years he's been in the league, he's been the runner-up, if not the MVP. This year, he finished as a first-team All-MLB outfielder while finishing with a Silver Slugger as well. As Mike Trout continues to put Hall of Fame season after Hall of Fame season, and considering he's only 29 and he has at least a good decade of baseball left, Mike Trout is definitely a player that I plan on keeping my eyes on in 2021 as a baseball player. And then finishing out the division, I don't think I have anyone listed for the Seattle Mariners as is. But as of right now, those are all the players in the American League that I find elite. Jumping really quickly to the National League, starting in the East with my hometown team, the Atlanta Braves. Going down the position players, I think their starting pitcher, Mike Soroka, definitely deserves to be recognized as elite. In his rookie season, he finished second in Rookie of the Year voting behind Pete Alonso, who quite arguably had the greatest National League Rookie Year season of all time. And he established himself as the ace on the second best regular season team, the Atlanta Braves, as he was put together an ERA season put together a sub-3 ERA season. Going into this season, he was pitching incredibly well, but then he tore his Achilles early on in the season. But I think, considering he's 23 and he's pitched incredibly well at such a young age, and he was one of the youngest players in the MLB when he came, and he still didn't flop, Mike Soroka is definitely going to be a very good and elite player for a very long time in the MLB. I think that Achilles injury is unfortunate, but he still has a lot of good baseball left to play. and especially because this Atlanta Braves core is very young. I think he's going to be the pitching staple in this on this roster for a very, very long time. Going to the position players, their 30-year-old first baseman Freddie Freeman, who most recently won the National League MVP, who was the first team All MLB first baseman over the AL MVP. And of course, in the National League Hank Aaron Award winner, deserves to be recognized as one of the elite players in baseball and one of the best, as he picked up his first MVP season of his career while leading the Atlanta Braves to almost winning the NLCS. But Freddie Freeman, as an individual player, you've seen the progression, and I think that when he plays a full season, we're going to see what Freddie Freeman can do over the course of an entire season. I think that their second baseman, Ozzie Albies, deserves to be recognized as elite. His last year during his age 22 season, a season where he wasn't named an All-Star, he led the National League in hits at 22 years old as a switch hitter, which is a very tough feat to do. And because of that, he's only 23 years old. I think the future of the second base position is Ozzie Albies. Continuing on, I think their outfielder, Ronald Acuna Jr., also deserves to be recognized as elite. He finishes the elite core of he's the third 23-year-old, the third player born in 1997 on this list. And he's just a player that continues to get better and better. For the Atlanta Braves, he's putting together elite hitting and powerful production seasons, added to the fact that he's one of the best defensive players in baseball as well. He steals a lot of bases. He's only 23 years old, and his career is only going to get better. It'll be amazing to see how his career lines up alongside Juan Soto for the near future, as Ronald Acuna Jr. will be the face of this young Atlanta Braves core, a very talented Atlanta Braves core, moving on into the future. Jumping down, because I don't have anyone listed from the Marlins, but from the Nationals, starting off with their starting pitcher, I think that Max Scherzer deserves to be recognized. Their 36-year-old starting pitcher, who won the Cy Young in the National League and the American League, which I think he's one of the few players to ever do so, one of the few players in the modern MLB to do such a thing, which is a very impressive feat. He won his first championship in 2019 as the best player on the team. He's shown game in and game out why the Nationals pay him so much money. And coming into 2021, I don't think his age is going to be a harming factor in what pushes Max Scherzer to have another amazing season. And I think he's already one of the league's greatest of all time for what he's done, especially in the American League and National League. But he's a player that won a championship in the most recent full season of MLB, so he deserves credit for that. And then I think their outfielder, Juan Soto, deserves to be recognized for being one of the league's premier outfielders. In a season where he lost about 10 games because he was falsely he falsely classified for the COVID vaccine, or for the COVID virus. He still came back and he led all baseball players in percentage stats. He led them in batting average, slugging percentage, on base plus slugging percentage. He kind of led in all that, so he would finish as a first-team All-MLB outfielder, and he was a Silver Slugger at the position as he put together an amazing season beginning to end. And at 21, he's already a World Series champion, so I mean that's already enough to say. He's one of the best players in all of baseball, and I think that with that said, he deserves his respect at the position, and as much acclaim as I have for Ronald Acuna, I think that he's definitely a player. I think that Juan Soto is definitely a player that I'm going to be watching, that a lot of baseball fans are going to be watching in the near future, just to see how his career pans out. He's only 21; he has his best years ahead of him. And then staying out in that division, jumping to Philadelphia, I think that Bryce Harper is the only player on the Philadelphia Phillies that deserves to be labeled as elite. His $300 million contract should be evident of that. And, of course, he already has a National League MVP. And he still consistently puts up National League MVP, or at least all-star numbers. And for that itself, he deserves his credit. And I think it's also worth noting that once he left, the Nationals were good enough of a team to win the World Series. But I think that he makes the Philadelphia Phillies a very watchable team. And I actually enjoy watching the Phillies because Bryce Harper's on the team. He brings sauce, and he can actually play baseball incredibly well. Ever since he got his start at high school, like he's known what he's been doing, and at 28, he has a lot of good years of baseball left. So he's going to be a very fun player to watch. And then finishing out the division, just finishing out with the New York Mets, their starting pitcher Jacob deGrom was very close to finishing with back-to-back Cy Young awards. I mean, he won back-to-back awards in the last 2 full seasons, which should show you how great Jacob deGrom is. And at 32, there's no signs of slowing down. With the New York Mets, they should be very impressive this season, considering they have arguably the best pitcher in baseball as their ace. And then their only position player is their 26-year-old first baseman, Pete Alonso, who arguably had the greatest National League MVP season of all time after putting up over 50 home runs. And last season, after a kind of tough start, he was able to get everything going for him. Going into this season for the New York Mets, I think Pete Alonso is going to get a lot of big hits for the team. And he also hits for average, and he can play pretty good defense as well. And at 26, I still think he has a good amount of good years left on that organization. So that's the Mets. That rounds out the National League East. Jumping into the National League, I think in the National League Central, starting with the Reds, I think their 29-year-old third baseman, Eugenio Suarez, deserves to be recognized as a lead. Even though he leads the league in strikeouts over the last 2 seasons, he still hit 40 home runs and over 100 RBIs, and I think that's a very tough feat to do. And for his ability to do that, I just think that in itself is enough to garner elite recognition, especially in that division, considering he's the best player on that team for now. I would say that Trevor Bauer is also elite, but he's not on the team anymore. He's an MLB free agent. But Trevor Bauer was the National League Cy Young winner after putting together an amazing season from beginning to end, as he ended up making the Reds look a lot better than they did. He put up all scoreless innings against the Atlanta Braves before they eventually lost. And I can't wait to see what Trevor Bauer does on a new team. As of right now, as of December 30th, Trevor Bauer is not officially on a team. But he deserves to be recognized as elite regardless. He's 29 and he has his best years ahead of him. And another free agent from a team that I kind of missed earlier was Marcell Ozuna, who's a 30-year-old designated hitter who just left the Atlanta Braves organization. He did not get picked back up because the universal DH rule was not picked up by the National League, and he's still currently looking for a team to play with. But don't be mistaken, he still finished with the National League lead in home runs and RBIs for the season. He was very big for the Braves in the playoffs. The Braves just don't have him on their team because they don't have a designated hitter, and I mean they can't afford to not have a player that's elite at his position, considering how good the Braves defense is. And then jumping out to the American League, because there's a free agent that I missed, is DJ LeMahieu, the second baseman from the New York Yankees, who's 32 years old. He's the only player in the modern MLB era, or at least since 1902, to finish with the batting title in the American League and the National League. He did so with the Rockies in 2017, and he did so with the Yankees last year. That's an incredible feat, and I think he's going to go down in the history books in the MLB for putting together an amazing season, and I think DJ LeMahieu deserves to be recognized for his elite play, his elite talent. And then that's what that's looking like. Jumping out to Milwaukee, I think that their replacement pitcher, Josh Hader, deserves to be recognized as a lead. He's a 2-time All-Star. He's been recognized as one of the most formidable closers in history. This year was kind of a tough season, considering he gave up a lot of home runs. But considering he pitched a perfect inning this year, he's had an amazing 13-game start to the season. Josh Hader, considering I don't have that many replacement pitchers on this list, I think that Josh Hader, just by him being on this list, should show you how much he stands out as a closer. And the other closer was Devin Williams, who was named the National League Reliever of the Year and the Rookie of the Year. He struck out 53% of his batters faced. He had a .33 ERA, and he was the first reliever to win Rookie of the Year since Craig Kimbrell did for San Diego. So, I mean, those are two amazing players. And then their only position player is Christian Yelich, who is their 29-year-old outfielder, who won the 2018 National League MVP, who was very close to winning it in 2019. I think he would have won it had he finished out the entire season. But, of course, he didn't. Christian Yelich is one of the best players in baseball, and once he gets back this season, I think that he's going to inflict a lot of damage, especially when he has an entire season at his disposal. I don't think a lot of baseball teams can stop Christian Yelich at his best. So that's the Brewers. Jumping out to St. Louis for the St. Louis Cardinals, I think their first baseman, Paul Goldschmidt, definitely deserves to be recognized for how amazing he's been. He's been arguably the best first baseman in baseball for half a decade before he was surpassed by Freddie Freeman. He's still hitting for average for St. Louis, and he's one of the big reasons why the Cardinals have made the playoffs both of the years that he's been in town. I just think at 33, he's not the player that he once was, but he's still an elite first baseman nonetheless, and he still plays amazing defense. So those are the Cardinals. There's no one that I listed from the Pittsburgh Pirates. So finishing out with the Chicago Cubs, I'd say that their closer, Craig Kimbrell, deserves to be recognized as a lead. He's a 7 or 8 time MLB All-Star as a closer. His last full season, he helped the Boston Red Sox win the World Series. His most recent years have been tough because after his World Series win with the Red Sox, he was picked up in the middle of the season by Chicago, which is a very tough predicament to be in as a closer. And then last year, he didn't pitch too terribly. I think that this is his last year to prove that he's still an elite pitcher, because I think players that are consistently this great throughout their career still have a little bit left in the tank. And I can't wait to see what Craig Kimbrell does for the Chicago Cubs when he actually plays. And then moving to the position players, their third baseman, Chris Bryant, who is 28 years old, deserves to be recognized as a lead. He won after winning the Rookie of the Year, he ended up winning the World Series and the MVP in his second year in the league, and he's still been an all-star caliber player since. I think Chris Bryant doesn't get enough respect because it's been 4 years ago since his absolute best season, but he's still putting up elite numbers in a way that very few players can. And even last year with the Cubs, he was very instrumental in them making the playoffs yet again. So Chris Bryant deserves to be recognized. And of course, their 28-year-old shortstop, Javier Baez, deserves to be recognized as one of the most elite shortstops as well. Last season, he didn't particularly have a great season, but he still hits incredibly well. He gets a lot of RBIs, and he's one of the best defensive shortstops in the game. So, I mean, there's a lot there. He even won the Gold Glove for defensive players this year, just to show you how dominant he is as a defensive player, even though we all know how good he is as an offensive player. So that's the Chicago Cubs rounding out the National League Central. And then last but not least, jumping out west, starting out with the Arizona Diamondbacks, I think that their starting pitcher, Zach Gallen, at 25, deserves to be recognized as elite. He's had 2 seasons in the MLB, and both seasons he's had a sub-3 ERA, which is a very tough feat to do. The Diamondbacks just aren't that great of a team, but when Zach Gallen plays, he puts up consistent elite performances, and it's a matter of time before he makes his first All-Star game as a member of the Diamondbacks. Jumping out to Colorado with the Colorado Rockies, I think that their third baseman, Nolan Arenado, deserves to be recognized as one of the most elite players in baseball. He's been in the league for 8 seasons, and he has 8 Gold Gloves, as in he was the best defensive third baseman, which is a tough position to win shortstop in regardless. He was the best defensive third baseman for 8 years running, and he's still like a 4-time Silver Slugger who puts up 30 30 plus home runs, 110 RBIs in a season. So, of course, yes, Nolan Arenado is in a class of his own when it comes to third base within the MLB. The only thing against him is that he doesn't have a championship, and that's because the Colorado Rockies haven't historically been a championship caliber team. But Nolan Arenado consistently shows up for work every day and shows why he's one of the best players in baseball. Their 28-year-old shortstop Trevor Story, I think, also deserves to be recognized as a lead. He's starting to grow into one of the league's best young shortstops, and he's hitting home runs at an elite pace. And I guess that is kind of juiced by the fact that they do play in Denver. But Trevor Story, he still has yet to show why he isn't an elite player. He's a perennial all-star, and he's considering he's 28. He still has some good years of baseball out in Colorado. And then I think that for the Rockies, their 34-year-old outfielder Charlie Blackmon deserves to be recognized as a lead as well. Even though he only finished the season with a 303 batting average after starting the season with a 400 batting average, he still deserves a 300 batting average over the course of an entire season is still incredibly elite. And over his last few seasons, he's still been able to rake out a lot of crazy hits as he hits incredibly well for average. And I think that you can't ignore Charlie Blackmon's production for the Rockies, so he definitely deserves to be recognized as an elite player as well. I don't think I have anyone listed for the San Francisco Giants as of right now. But continuing on in that state, for the San Diego Padres, I said that they now have two new elite starting pitchers on their roster. First, they have the 34-year-old starting pitcher from the Chicago Cubs, Yu Darvish, who was at one point the best pitcher in all of Japan before he came to the States. He's a four-time All-Star who put up an amazing season. He was a first-team All-MLB starting pitcher with the Chicago Cubs, pitching a sub-3 near 2, like a 2.1 or a 2.20 ERA for the entire season. And now the move to San Diego is a very big move considering the Padres were pretty close. They were a pitching staff away from actually making it this year. And then alongside Yu Darvish on the mound is going to be Blake Snell, the 28-year-old former AL Cy Young winner from Tampa Bay. He was pulled in the World Series against the Dodgers, so I can see why he eventually left the team. He's an amazing left-handed pitcher, and he was a player that I was waiting for just to see if he put together another elite season. So just to show that his Cy Young season wasn't a fluke. Blake Snell definitely deserves to be recognized as one of the best players in all of baseball. And his addition to the San Diego Padres might prove very vital for the San Diego Padres moving forward. But I think that. I think that Blake Snell is going to be a very big addition to that team. Additionally, on the San Diego Padres, their 28-year-old third baseman Manny Machado is also an elite player. They signed him for $300 million. They don't give those contracts out to players that aren't elite. After putting together an amazing resume through Baltimore and through his 1.5 season in Los Angeles, his first season at San Diego was pretty impressive considering he wasn't an all-star. And this year he was an MVP finalist in the National League, a very tough league. He finished only behind Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman in the league, just to show you how great and how dynamic of a third baseman Manny Machado is, especially offensively, for how good he's been. And then their 21-year-old shortstop Fernando Tatis Jr. deserves recognition as well. He was born in 1999, and he was a very solid candidate for MVP for most of the year. So Fernando Tatis going into 2021 is definitely a player that a lot of baseball fans are going to keep their eye on. He can steal bases incredibly well, and he plays great defense. Considering he's 21, he's going to be a staple in the league for at least a decade more, unless he gets seriously injured. And then last but not least, I'm going to end with the 2020 and MLB champs with the Los Angeles Dodgers, starting with their GOAT pitcher, Clayton Kershaw, their 32-year-old pitcher, who won his very first major league championship in his career. After all the times that the Dodgers had made it through the playoffs, this is the first time that they finally won. And now Clayton Kershaw, with multiple Cy Youngs, and an MVP in the National League, deserves to take home the one piece of silverware, the one trophy that he wasn't that he wasn't able to take home before. I'm very proud of Clayton Kershaw for everything he's done in his career to win before he won the award. And I said that he was one of the greatest pitchers of all time before the Dodgers had even won the World Series. So this World Series win is most definitely icing on the cake. I'd also say their 26-year-old starting pitcher, Walker Buehler, deserves to be recognized as elite as well. Even though his last couple seasons haven't been that great, his first couple seasons have been really good. He finished third in MVP voting to Juan Soto and Ronald Acuna Jr. of all players. And then he helped the Dodgers jump right back into the playoff push. This year he was pretty good, but I mean he was dealing with a couple injuries on and off. But Walker Buehler at 26, considering he has a lot of good years of baseball left, I think it's worth cashing in on him as an elite young player. And then going to the position players. Their 26-year-old shortstop Corey Seager, who was the NLDS and the NLDS MVP, the NLCS MVP, and I believe the World Series MVP, or at least he was the Series MVP for when they beat the Padres. But for the NLCS against the Braves and the World Series against the Rays, Corey Seager was named the MVP of those series. I think he's really started to come into his own. Before this most recent season, he was a two-time All-Star, and this year he's really started to come up big in big moments with the Los Angeles Dodgers, especially in the playoffs. And I think he's crossed the threshold into elite, and I don't think it's going to be a while before he looks back. And then going to the outfield, their 28-year-old outfielder Mookie Betts, who was the National League MVP runner-up, by the way, deserves to be recognized as elite for his amazing baseball over the last few years. In the last 3 years, he's won a championship, and he was one player away. Had Freddie Freeman not had an incredible season beginning to end, then Mookie Betts would be one of the few players to have an MVP in the National League and the American League, which is, like I said, an incredibly tough feat to it's an incredibly tough feat to chase. But of course, Mookie Betts at 28 years old, considering he has a lot of his best baseball ahead of him, he's definitely a candidate to win the MVP in 2 leagues, which should show you how great of a player he is. And then last but not least, their outfielder, Cody Bellinger, who is 25. He is a year off of his NL MVP, and he had some very big plays, and he was a very big part in helping the Los Angeles Dodgers win the World Series. So, since the last full season in the MLB, he was the MVP, which speaks a lot to how great and how dominant of a player he is. And now he can add a championship to his amazing resume all the way, considering he's only 25. He's a lot of baseball ahead of him, and considering he's won an MVP and a championship, I think there's a lot more great baseball to follow him wherever he goes. And and that's all the baseball players that I would consider elite in the world. Once again, it is Wednesday, December 30th, 2020, out here in this quarantine. Tomorrow, I'll get back regarding the football players, as an American football players that I regard as elite. But for now, I think these are all the players in baseball that I'm personally going to point out as elite throughout the entire year. And hopefully, this list will change at the end of 2021, going into 2022. Hopefully, I add a lot of players. More than likely there's gonna be some players that I cut. But it's gonna be a very interesting development just to see how these players go into 2021, let alone their seasons. And because this is my installment of the elite going into 2021, for each player's birthday, I'm gonna make an individually elite profile, which should show how these players are especially elite within their own sport. But with that said, I want to thank you once again for listening to all 43 minutes of my piece. I hope all is well, and then I'll catch you tomorrow with the NFL's best players. With that said, I hope all is well, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Peace out.